sat at her table. The lights in her room were off, and she stared at the green light that reflected in from the outside. She was sick of seeing green. Ready to be gone, ready to just get G out of here. But she felt like there was nothing she could do. Her arm was feeling better since the crash, and she'd used one of her healing packs on it, one of her last ones. So she was feeling better physically, but not in any other way. Eventually a knock came at her door, and she didn't answer. There was no one here worth talking to. And finally the door creaked open, and Darren turned on the overhead lights. He said, "Do you really prefer the green? I've gotten used to it, but I really prefer white lights. I don't know how you could sit here in the dark." He came in and set a large platter of food on the table next to Scar, and reached to the wall and pulled out a chair from the white material. He sat down and said, "I know you haven't eaten anything, so figured I'd bring a meal to you." Scar said, "I'm not hungry." He said, "You keep saying that. I don't understand that. Everyone has to eat at some point, especially if we're doing the kind of things that you do. I'm always hungry." And Scar sighed and looked at Darren and said, "Do you think about anything other than food? Do you even care about G and what's going on?" He pursed his lips as he ladled a group of brown bubbles. He looked like into a long oblong bowl. He set the ladle down, and he said, "The last 16 years of my life have been devoted to Reggie, and to keeping him safe, and to keeping the world safe from him. I gave him everything and tried to keep him safe, and he laughed in the face of it and followed you to this, despite everything that I've done. Every care that I've shown him, he's worked against. And it hurts so much because I care, Scar. So yes, I just can't dwell on it anymore, or I will keep hurting." He reached out and picked up a pouring bowl with some kind of white sauce and poured it over the brown bubbles. They'd stuck in a kind of formation until he poured the sauce, and then they all spread out. He sipped it and smacked his lips and said, "Dirapach. It's light, but extremely filling. I don't know how they do it. All of Demias food is kind of incredible. Please, dig in. Eat anything that you'd like. Though, I'd recommend the castana first. It changes the taste buds, which helps with some of the Demias food. Some of it's a little strange, not what you're used to." And Scar eyed the food, not sure if she wanted to try any of it. Instead, she asked a question. "Do you have any stories about G? What was he like as a kid?" Darren smiled after finishing his bowl and tore off a piece of colorful bread from a large loaf. He said, "Yeah, I didn't know him super well. We were next door neighbors, and so we got the connection that comes with that, but I do remember one time when he was 6, as he was constantly climbing my trees and exploring my backyard through a gap in the fence. And I remember when he was 6, he had been climbing a tree and fell out. He broke his ankle and started crying. At this point, Scar cut in and said, "I would have paid to see that." Darren said, "Scar, that's terrible." She said, "No, the crying part, that sounds adorable." Darren still gave her a queer look as he continued his story. As he continued to talk, Scar took a slice of red fruit that was there and spread the red-white whip that he'd called castana on it. The fruit was bitter, and the castana wasn't creamy like she thought it would be, but it somehow made it sweet. She ate it quickly, but it was good. He continued his story, saying, yeah, he broke his ankle and couldn't run home, and so he sat there crying, not sure what to do. And at 6 years old, I wasn't too afraid of him finding out about traveling. So I went and got a medical scanner that I'd gotten from another world and used it to heal him. He got better and stopped crying immediately. Gave me a hug and ran straight up back into the tree. If I remember right, he was looking for tree houses up there. Scar laughed at that and found herself taking a piece of the colorful bread. It was savory and a lot more tasty than she'd thought. And Darren said, well, I'd better head out. Gotta make sure that we're finding him and doing what we can for the kid. Want me to leave anything? Scar hesitated before taking the loaf off the tray. She said, I'll keep this one. He said, all right, please do. It's yours. And left her. She went to the bed to eat some more of the bread before putting the rest back in her pocket. And she somehow felt a lot better. Nothing had changed, but she felt a lot better about things. How had Darren done it? She still wasn't sure, but she sat there and didn't want to fall back into just worrying about G. She had to do something and got up and decided to do a little bit of exploring. She left her apartment, or the room that they had given her, and started wandering throughout the hallways and looking for staircases so she could go up, but there were no staircases that she could see, and she thought, what in the world do they even use? And that's when she realized that what she'd assumed were just decorations were parts of the wall or parts of the floor that curved onto the wall, that you changed the direction that you were walking, and there were doors set into the walls that she thought were just decoration. And very curious, she sidestepped and started walking along this, the side of the hallway that curved up onto the wall. And as she did, it began to glow a brighter green. This walkway was marked green as it was, but it began to glow brighter. And it held her. She walked up onto the wall, and she thought, interesting. And as she turned, there were doors up and down, and she decided to go up and opened the door that was there and came up onto the next floor and thought, interesting. And she wondered if maybe you had to be attached to the floor. And so cautiously she tried jumping and oriented herself to the normal floor, but slammed against the wall on her side and stood back up and tried jumping higher to see if she could get out of its gravity field, but fell back down to the floor. Interesting. And at that point, a Profithian came around the corner, and he said, so you're the one who's been causing all the trouble. Scar didn't like to hear that because she wasn't. But she said, yes. How do you know I'm her? And he said, well, there aren't many humans around here, and unless they were nosy, I doubt that they'd be testing our gravity systems. And she said, fair enough. And she realized that her earbuds were translating really, really well. Like, his speaking was perfect. And that's when she realized he was speaking English. And he wasn't wearing one of the Profithian translators. And she said, how do you know English so well? He shrugged his shoulders and said, all Palismani are trained. and we want to know the common languages. Training alongside Darren just made me want to do that all the more. Though granted, I'm probably the best one at speaking common. Though I have experience with others. I know Causal and Chirinair, and a few others, but yeah. I've practiced a lot. And Scar said, but why when you just have translators to do it for you? He said the prideful ones wear translators, think they're better and think that Profician is better than other languages. But I feel like I can't do the best job that I can do unless I know the languages. And serving Sireste, it takes sacrifice. And she thought, interesting. And she asked, what brings you here? I'm guessing that Darren sent you. And he said, whoa. Darren did not send me, though yes, I was sent to keep an eye on you. We are partners, though, not master-servant. We're at the same level, along everything else. And at that moment, a light on his uniform began to flash. And he said, and we wanted to keep you up close, to keep watch over you, and in case this happened. And she said, what? He said, follow me. He joined her along the side and went down onto one of the sky bridges and stopped in the middle of the sky bridge and said, they found G. They're going to come and pick us up. And she said, do we need to go somewhere? He said, nope, this will work well. She said, how are we going to get on a ship from here? And Mirithius, as he introduced himself, he said, you'll see. Just trust me. I know you can fly and things. Just don't. Just trust me. You'll be fine. And pulled out a small metal bead and dropped it. The moment it hit the floor disappeared. And Scar reserved her instinct to lash out and pull against the walls. She fell for a moment before finding herself sprawled against the back of the hull of a Profician ship. Not the same one they traveled in before. That one was destroyed, but a new one. Somehow Mirithius had managed to land on one knee, and he stood and shook hands with Darren and Ceridian, who were already there. And Darren offered Scar a hand to lift her up, and she smacked it away and stood up on her own and said, what's going on? And Darren explained that they'd found G, or Destiny, as he was now. That he'd been found in a national park, and they'd ordered evacuation, but they needed to go in there and stop him. And Scar's magic might work, but they had to stop him now. And if not now, then there might be nothing that they could do. So they were going in with all of their firepower to stop him. And that worried Scar until she realized that by firepower he meant the four of them. That helped her feel a little bit better, though she was still worried about facing G. She did not take out her lightsaber. She was not going to use that against G, but she had a shield ready and pulled out her tranquilizing gun. Mirithius and Ceridian had staffs ready, the same kind that Ceridian had used before, and Mirithius took an orange pellet off of a belt that he'd slung across his chest and slipped it into a hole in the center of the staff where the two parts of the staff combined. And Scar said, what's that? Mirithius explained that it's Chensik, a weapon devised against sires. It uses magic from a world where magic is based on chance, and as it is, the product is a lightning blast, which is extremely difficult to predict as it is, and it's the best thing that they have against Destiny. Hard to aim, but very useful. And she nodded, hoping that they didn't have to use those again. And Darren fitted himself with white plated, like armor-plated gloves and everyone was ready to go and nodded to each other. The pilot, Darren translated to Scar, that the pilot would fly down, drop them off, and fly back up to safety and come back when they asked, but they were on their own for this. They needed to take in destiny. Scar nodded. She would do her best, though she wasn't going to hurt Scar. She'd protect the others. She'd take his concentration, but she wasn't going to hurt him. The craft landed long enough for them to all get out. It was a jungle that they were in, but covered with patches of steaming water, all kinds of colors, and fallen trees and patches. They stopped and crouched back to back so that they could see in every direction as the shuttle flew off. And they sat silent, waiting for something. They saw Destiny burst out from behind a bush and come sprinting at them, throwing himself over steaming water to fight them. End of chapter 8.